Go. And hello, everyone, and welcome to a special summer SciByte for August the 6th, 2013. Again, like I said last week, this is kind of a beta test, sort of first episode for this show. We're going to try to do a couple of these during our summer hiatus. So let me know what you think, put in the comments below. And today we are going to take a look at a new ideas for the cause of migraines, stopping light, and as always, take a peek back into history and up in the sky this week. And joining us, as is last week, is our special co-host, Nikki. Hello there, Nikki.
Hello, Heather. How's it going?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Oh, doing pretty good. Stoked Radio's about to head off to Vegas, but we gotta squeeze in one quick side bite, do our duty for science before we go running off to a convention.
Most excellent. So, first up on the docket, if you
Yes.
suffer from migraines, the story might be of interest to you. So, there is a network of arteries that supply the blood flow to the brain that scientists now say is more likely to be incomplete or in a different configuration for people who suffer migraines. So, they estimate 28 million Americans suffer from migraines, just as a random number that I found. And they once thought that it was due to the dilation of blood vessels in the brain, and more recently, it's been kind of attributed to abnormal neural signals. And now, this new research says that it could be the actual variations in the arteries that lead to specific blood flows that may contribute to triggering migraines. So, these alterations would increase susceptibility for changes in that blood flow and then sort of possibly have the chance to kick off migraines. So they have seen that people with migraines, they went through and they did a study of 170 different people, had a what they call a control group, people with no headaches, then had people who had migraines with aura, those who had migraines without aura. So they split them all up. And for everyone who had migraines, they had these differences in the structures of their blood vessels. It wasn't a one-to-one correlation. These different structures did not mean you always have a migraine, but it was a significant number of people. This incomplete, what they call circle of Willis, said that with an aura, like 73% of the people had it. Without an aura, 67% of the people had it. And, a little under half had of the headache-free group had them. So statistically, it's fairly significant, but it's definitely not 100%. So what made it also interesting is that these blood flows are predominantly in the back of the brain, where the visual cortex is actually located, which would make sense because a lot of migraine sufferers' auras have something to do with visual symptoms, seeing distortions, spots, wavy lines, that kind of a thing. But in the end, it could mean that both migraines and this quote unquote incomplete circle of Willis, that's the blood vessel that we were looking at, that may be an association. So maybe you could have some sort of diagnostic test, could help pinpoint contributing factors. From there, it could maybe lead to treatment strategies or, being personalized or tested in specific groups of people. Do they have this type of abnormality, and perhaps that type of abnormality need a specific type of treatment that would actually do very well.
Hmm. Interesting. Because last time I did any reading on migraines just to see if the occasional headaches I was suffering, which oddly enough are not migraines, but of course I was looking into them, everything I read just said it was a circulation problem. So this I guess, blood vessel structure kind of shed some new lights on the whole thing. And for any who appreciate a good popular culture reference, it turns out that Willis did in fact know what he was talking about when Sir Gary Coleman asked him.
But yes, this but it is the circulation, the blood vessels. It would also mean that some people say that when they're dehydrated, it kicks off
Mm,
much quicker, and that would also kind of lead to it. And I've had a couple of migraines, and they're not pleasant. They're not as bad as some people end up with, but so this is definitely me going, brain, you have more reasons to be mad at me, don't you?
mm. It's interesting too, though, because dehydration being, pardon me, a possible cause, yet common cure I hear for migraines is have a cup of coffee, and of course the caffeine could make you dehydrated even more, but it's supposed to fix your circulation, so
Yeah, it's the whole idea of that is dilating the blood vessels. So it's sort of do that sort of thing, which would also make sense if there's abnormalities, then perhaps a a tweak in the blood vessel or partial collapse or something along those lines would be could be caused by dehydration, and dilating it would sort of open up the flow again.
okay. So now we know what you're talking about, Willis. Um, guess we're moving on to the next one, which is stopping and storing of light.
Yes, a team of researchers have actually succeeded in causing light to stop and be held in place for 60 seconds. So, speed of light 299 million meters per second and some change. But in 1999, a team of researchers were actually able to slow it down to 70 meters a second. That's 0.0000056 of a percent of the actual speed of light. Fast forward a couple of years later, 2001, a team was actually able to stop light just for a fraction of a second. Fast forward to a couple months ago, they're able to stop it for about 16 seconds. And now they're up to actually a minute.
So for 1 minute, the photons just stop, dead in space.
Yeah, so what they did was they had this crystal. It doesn't normally transmit light at all. They cooled it down to really, really low temperatures, fired a laser at it, which made it kind of take two different states. So it made it transparent for a very specific range of frequencies of light. And then they were able to sort of turn that transparency sort of off and able to hold that there for 60 seconds and then turn it back on, and the light was able to leave. So, I mean, obviously, this if you have this kind of thing, it could be quantum computers. You could actually, have light carry data, store it, sort of pace it out. But it would essentially be like shining a flashlight into a dark room, shut the door, wait for a minute, open up the door on the other side of the room, and then the light comes out again. So it's kind of a strange thing that physics is tweaking my brain with, and I imagine tweaking everyone's brain with. But it's really interesting that to think that. And I really didn't realize that they'd made it. They've been able to stop it for as long as they had before this, even. But it's definitely not easy desktop stuff yet. It's super cooled, super super cooled crystals, super highly powered lasers. So for right now, it's research
It's still,
study only.
yeah, it's still quite a bit of a chore. It's not something you're going to be able to do with your at-home chemistry set.
No, definitely not at home chemistry set quite yet.
So, and the next thing we're looking at is taking a peek at the science calendar.
That is right. We often take a peek back into history, and this week there's sort of two histories. 1 year ago today, the Mars Curiosity lander, it landed. That is correct, and science was very happy. So 1 year ago, a radioactive powered Mars Curiosity rover built-in laser lowered to the surface of Mars via a sky crane, and science and myself rejoiced. So yes, it came down through the little thrusters. We went through the atmosphere, had the parachute to slow it down, then had a little jetpack that sort of hovered above the surface of Mars, lowered the rover down via a cable, and I was sitting there watching it. I definitely remember watching it and kind of listening to the countdown, being very distracted, trying to play a game and being like, wait, wait, must pay attention. And yes, then everyone cheered, and I cheered. And ever since then, I've been giving updates and science, and lots of science has been coming from Mars. The whole purpose of it was to see if life could have ever existed on Mars, and they found that within 2 months. They said, "Hey, there was water here, and if it was still there, you could have picked it up and drank it." So pH neutral,
So,
happy water.
oh, totally clean
Yeah, well,
and drinkable.
yep, it would have been
As,
like river water.
yeah, as clean as, of course, groundwater would be on the Martian surface, of course, which would have its own lovely little prizes, I'm sure.
Well, iron content might be high, but that's okay.
Mm. Yes, follow it downstream and you might find the Prothean ruins.
Of course. Science only kind of raises its eyebrows at that. But in actual history, going back 23 years ago, August 12th, 1990, the T Rex Sioux was discovered. So it was an excavation where the whole team had gone out and they were kind of wrapping up. And Susan Hendrickson went back out to kind of do one last kicking about. Saw a couple of fossil bones. Said, "Hey, cool." So then everyone came back out and started digging up, and it was from a Tyrannosaurus Rex. And what made it crazy was that it was over 90% complete. It was the first time that a T Rex had been found so complete. Most of them were discovered just a handful of bones here or there. But in this case, it was most of the skeleton and actually the oldest specimen that they'd been able to find, the largest. This is 5 foot long skull and over nine, and the bones were really, really well preserved. Now they were kind of jumbled a little bit, probably because it had been so well preserved it got buried underwater really quickly. So none of its bones got carried away either by predators or scavengers or anything. But they'd seen some infection evidence and things like that, and some bone fractures, so they kind of lived a rough and tumble life, but it was pretty cool that they were actually able to find one so complete. There was a bit of who owned it, and it actually went up for auction for $8.36 million in order to be displayed to the Field Museum in Chicago. But 23 years ago, should I say, years ago, this week, the most complete Tyrannosaurus Rex skeleton was discovered.
Mm. And if you were to see a T-Rex in real life, you would of course be looking up. But since there's no T-Rex in the ray right now, what would we see if we were looking up?
And good transition. This week on Friday, August the 9th, looking low to the west to southwestern sky, about 30 minutes after sunset, you're able to see Venus just above the crescent moon. On Saturday, August the 10th, now the crescent moon will be sitting just to the left of Venus. And so if you happen to be out and about at a convention or anywhere else, and if you're able to actually see in the west to southwest sky, actually if you're in a convention in Vegas, you probably won't be able to see anything in the sky except neon lights. But if you're far enough away from lights, you're looking that way, and you'll be able to see the moon and Venus. In general, Mercury, Mars, and Jupiter are all in the east-northeast before and after dawn, Jupiter being the brightest and the highest of the three, Mars to its lower left, and to Mars's lower left, even further, is the planet Mercury, which you may or may not be able to see with the naked eye. You might need binoculars for that. And Venus is still hanging out low in the west in the evening twilight, and Saturn is still hanging about over in the southwest as twilight fades, and the blue star Spica actually sits about 12 degrees to its lower right, and a one fist held at arm's length is about 10 degrees. So it's Saturn on top, and Spica is about one fist to the lower right below it. And I think that is all the science for this week. So thank you. Go ahead.
Uh, well, yes, that doesn't look like we are at the end of the docket already.
Yes, it is. Went by fast this week. And thank you for...
plowing through here.
Yes, make the science move forward. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Again, if you have comments, or leave them down in the comment places below, wherever you might be looking. And thank you, Nikki, for joining us once again.
Yes, thanks for having me again, and remember, keep the comments civil.
Yes. All right. I hope to see you all next time.